We want to show you what Callbi can do, and I'm quite excited today. What I'm going to do, I'm quickly just going to share my screen. Today is all about sales. So firstly, I'm just going to share with you, we're going to start off just as with any sales environment, right? If you can please just confirm you're able to see my screen, right?
Confirm, correct.
Okay, brilliant. So I'm just quickly going to show you the script because this is where it all starts. What we're looking at is a basic sales script. So I'm not going to go through the whole script because I'm going to show you now from your script how we start using Callbi to assess your calls, but also to do an analysis and investigation on some of your other things to understand your drivers of non-sales, agent behavior, or sales. Firstly, your script, normal script, you've got your opening, where we're phoning from on behalf of, your pitch phrases, exclusive, exciting offers, etc. We're looking at your callbacks, and we're going to touch on all of this within Callbi. We've got some product features and benefits, some objection handling, which I'm also going to touch on. Then your compliance stuff, which definitely I'm going to show you, but stuff like your calls recorded statement, your FSP statements, authorized financial services. Here we see some more product benefits, and then your normal process. So customer authentication, objection handling, your qualifying questions, etc. So this is from your script that your agent would work through. I'm quickly just going to show you for the objections, just so that you know when we get there, your normal objection handling stuff. So if the customer says something like, I don't qualify, some guides and scripts of what the agent can do when they get that. Similarly with, I don't want more credit, etc., etc. So that's your script. I'm going to then go straight into Callbi, and let me quickly just share that screen for you on the Callbi screen. And I'm going to start off once again, simply by starting, and what you see in front of you is your Callbi query screen. Now, like you can see, I've already built quite a lot of queries, but I'm going to start off just by building a simple query so you can see how easy it is to use. So for now, and what I'm going to focus on first is obviously with sales, the most obvious ones are your compliance needs. So all your compliance checks. First, what I'm going to do as an example to build a query, I'm going to build a query for calls recorded statement. So very easy, just to demonstrate what you can see here is you open up your screen to build it, and I'm just going to call it calls recorded statement as example. So very easy, you give your query a name, you give it a description, agent advised that calls are recorded. This process is part of an accuracy process, which I'm not going to go through right now, but this is everything that we train on. When we train you, obviously there's a process at the back to ensure that your query is correct. You don't want to work on results if you haven't checked the validity of the results. So that's just part of that process. Very easy then when you build your query, you add all of the words or phrases that Callbi needs to look for within your text transcript. So obviously that statement says, please note that calls are recorded, or the agent can say, note that this call is recorded. And then we've also got things like for quality purposes, we can see usually for security purposes in our example script today, that is part of what the script says. We can add in there, for instance, then also your vernacular languages, because Callbi does English, Afrikaans, isiZulu, and Sesotho. So you can also add those variations, for instance, calls recordiwe or call recordwa. So this is just, obviously you can expand it. This is just a basic example. But once you've built your query, what you will then see is Callbi will show you all of the calls that matches one of those words or phrases. So right here, it takes us straight there where we can now see, brilliant, this call may be recorded, quality, security, etc. So that's just at the back how you build your queries, how easy it is to build a very simple query. I also just want to show you, let's just save this query quickly. You can also, in a similar way, build a query that looks for the absence of a certain word or phrase. So with this example, I've built a query where it says the calls recorded statement is not present. So this is very nice to highlight where agents are not doing what they need to and where you need to start coaching or guiding. So in here, what you'll see, no highlight, but there is no call recorded statement as part of that call. So that's just
so can I just come in here very quickly for those who are not familiar with Callbi? In the back end of this, all that really happens is the system, we set up the system to extract your calls over a particular period, upload them to the Amazon instance, and literally within an hour, the calls are available to carry out analytics. Generally speaking, clients might do this overnight, but it could be set up within an hour that they're in the system and able to be analyzed. Henriette, back to you.
Thanks, Rod. Brilliant. So like I said, firstly, the first thing I'm just going to show you, which is, I think in any sales environment with compliance and everything that has a monetary influence, if you do something, it's very key to ensure that your compliance is met. Firstly, I'm going to focus on the compliance queries, and I'm going to show you how you can build a scorecard that checks all of those compliance things. So in this case, in our script, we've got 6 compliance points. Quickly going to show you, we've got the calls recorded statement, which I've shown you the query for. We've got a query that checks for the FSP, so authorized financial services. We've got a query that checks for customer authentication. I'm not going to go into everything. If you do want afterwards, if there's time, I can show you the details of the queries. We then also look at the pre-qualifying questions. Under here, for instance, is the debt review, curatorship, sequestration, and administration. We also have your credit vetting consent, and we've got your marketing consent. So having built those queries, very easy, what you then do is under your dashboards, you can build an actual scorecard. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to now build a scorecard. Going to add under here, this is a sales. So you give a name, compliance scorecard. Under here, we're going to select that we want to see a scorecard. So if you think about a scorecard, it's normal to your normal QA. It's going to give you a percentage of calls that passed a check or that met the query. For purposes now, and with any of your scorecards, you can group it by agent. So if you're interested more on the agent level from a team leader superior level, you can then also group by team. So if you're starting to look at regions, and I'll show you the difference, but you've got all these various. If you're more interested higher level, call center, organization, you can choose that. I'm going to choose agent for now. And at the bottom, you build your scorecard. So remember, under here, we're building a compliance. So we want to add all of our compliance checks. Very easy. When you click, it allows you the drop down for all of your queries that you've built. So we're quickly just going to add those 6 compliance checks. Add query once again. Customer authenticated, your pre-qualifying questions, our credit vetting statement, and the last one is marketing consent. So this is typically what your QA would have listened for, especially if you've got a process where you need to vet the calls first before you can send it off for final fulfillment. In here, and the beauty is, and I'm going to show you the scorecard, but now based on 100% of your calls, it will immediately flag which of your calls did not meet one of these compliance checks. So you'll just see at the right, you can set if there's different weightings, so different points or scoring system. In this case, let's assume everything counts equally because they're all important, but you can go add your weighting based on points or percentages if you need to do that. So I'm just going to make it all. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just work on points for now. Callbi will calculate at the back, but everything counts equally. I'm going to add, and what you will now see is you see a scorecard in front of you per agent, because that's how we grouped it, that shows you all of their calls. And as you scroll to the right, all of your checks that you've attached under your scorecard now shows you under that the percentage of those calls that meets the query. So in this case, a positive query, this is the percentage of calls for each check that passed. So immediately you can see where we've got an issue on a specific compliance check. You can also scroll to your right. Based on your weighting, there's an overall percentage score. Remember under your filter, because in this case, we are only interested in sales calls. We will simply then just use our filter to go filter on only the calls we are interested in. So right here, we only want to score sales calls, and this gives you your picture. So very nice from any scorecard. You can toggle. We now know the high guys are good. We are more interested in the ones that didn't pass. Very easy then, if you click on it, it takes you into the call list with all of those calls. And at a glance, when you open it, you can then go see, anybody looking at it, which of your queries were matched or not matched, or you can look through the transcript, you can listen to the call, you can coach, and you can take action. So that was simply just your compliance scorecard that you can build. Up here, I'm just showing you the difference. For instance, if you group it then per team, the difference in views. So here immediately we can see Western Cape versus Gauteng. Here's something we need to concentrate on. So that was your compliance scorecards. Similarly, also just going to show you with any other dashboard, so any of your other scorecards. Here what we've done is looking at only a sales scorecard, which we've grouped. This is your overall QA scorecard. So it's not just your compliance checks. I'm going to take you to the right, but we've built queries for your call opening, your introduction, saying where you're phoning from on behalf of, looking at the reason for your call, your compliance statements are in there, but then also looking, for instance, at your qualifying questions, whether they've asked it, and I'll take you into the qualifying questions query, product features and benefits, etc. So similarly, so you build your queries based on everything that needs to be said, you build your scorecard and it scores your calls. You can also build a failed. In this case, what we've done, we've looked specifically at your qualifying questions. Let me quickly take you into that query. In this example, what we are looking for is qualifying questions not asked on the call. Qualifying questions in this case was looking for, are you employed? So either self or full-time. Is your salary, so do you earn more? And you'll see some variations as we've worked through the accuracy process. But is your salary more than 4,000 and your expenses less than 30? So in this example on your scorecard, it looks per agent, per sale, where your qualifying questions were not asked on that call. So at a glance immediately, if you see 100%, it means it was failed, because this is the inverse, it wasn't done. And again, you click on it, you go there, you coach on it. Similarly on your non-sales, and I'm not going to show you the scorecard, because this is actually the next use case that I want to take you through. So as much as we are interested in our sales, the compliance, once we get there and we make the calls, we also want to understand, why are we not making calls? What's happening at the back where we have not interested, or where the lead is simply just being closed? So next, what I'm going to take you through is an analysis of your non-sales. Very easy. And those pitch phrases that I've shown you, words, for instance, like exciting offer, lower interest rate, all of your hooks or all of your phrases that should hook your sale. Here we've built a query that looks for the presence of those pitch phrases. Now, the very first one looks at your not interested sales, and it shows you the percentage of those sales where your pitch phrases were actually used. So here we can see 50% for the day, 67, 25. We can then compare this against your sales calls where your pitch phrases were used. And here we can clearly see the difference between quite low on your non-interested versus really quite high on your sales. This goes back to checking your script. So if you see this difference, it should show you that your pitch phrases is effective. Where it was used, we could see the increase in your sales. Where it's not used, we know it then becomes a coaching or a training issue. So very nicely, we don't need to worry about script, but we need to train our agents. Here then we can pull per agent where they did not use those pitch phrases. And again, you toggle it, you go in and you coach. And once you start coaching, you can pull a line graph to then see. Hopefully what you're hoping to see here is, if you start coaching on the 1st of Jan, you're hoping for movement down. Obviously, we haven't coached anything yet, so that's why you see this line going. But very nice to see tracking if you start coaching, to track if there's movement in the right direction. So that was your pitch phrases. On your non-sales, obviously what we are also interested in, what I mentioned earlier, is that objection handling. Now I'm quickly going to show you the query just so that you can understand. But looking at objection handling, what this query would look at, and I'm going to show you the inverse where objection handling was not done. This query flags calls where there's an indication firstly under the first group that there is not interest. I don't want it, I'm not interested, I don't want more depth. You'll see there's some vernacular phrases in between, But this highlights there's an indication from customer or on the call that there's no interest. But then the query also looks for the absence of any of your phrases that would indicate objection handling. So can I ask, and in the script, what the agent should say is, can I ask the reason why you are not interested? Or when they say they don't want credit, the objection script says, we know people are careful, but credit is necessary in unforeseen events, etc. So this is what the query looks for, whether the agent did any objection handling. And very easy now that you've got your query and you've gone through your accuracy, we can now go have a look at all of your calls where it was dispositioned or wrapped as not interested, whether objection handling was not done or done on that call. So once again, here we can see quite a lot of calls where they didn't even objection handle. You can go in, you can coach, and you can train. Similarly, per agent, you can see, did they do objection handling or did they not? Then the last thing just under your non-sales, very easy, similar to how we've built the query to indicate non-interest from a customer. What this dashboard looks at is calls where the agent dispositioned as not interested, but there is no indication on that call from the customer side that they are not interested. So that could, for instance, and if you go in, could have been a voicemail call, or it could have been a callback call, but the agent dispositioned as customer not interested. Now, we all know that closes your lead. It's an opportunity lost on a sale. Also here, looking at callback required, where a query was built, indicating that there's a need for a callback. So I'm going to show you the query once again, just so that you understand it. But the callback query would look for indications like the customer's not available, I can't talk, going into a meeting, phone me later, we'll be in contact later, etc. Now, on this dashboard, we look where the agent wrapped the call as not interested or dropped. We're obviously going to close this lead, but in actual fact, it should have been a callback. So once again, lead wastage, we know that we want to work our leads as effectively as possible, but this is a nice analysis of your non-sales that you can then go through on. Perfect. Next that I'm quickly going to show you, so that was then our sales, our non-sales, our compliance is, and what I kind of touched on now is how you can also check your disposition statuses or wraps. We obviously want to make sure that the agents are wrapping correctly, and we know a lot of times they are not. It's either that they don't want to deal with the lead anymore, or they require more training to understand the wrap codes. But very easy under your dispositions, and I'm going to show some use cases. There's obviously a lot more. In this case, and what we find a lot of times is a lot of agents will disposition as a voicemail call, but in many times it wasn't a voicemail. So what we've done here is we've built a query, once again, that would look for the presence of a voicemail message in that call. Here you'll see something like press hash hang up, after the tone, leave your message. Obviously, you can build this query much longer, but it will look either for the presence or absence of a voicemail in that recording. Here what we've looked at is calls where the agent wrapped as a voicemail, but actually there's no voicemail message present on that call. So very easy to go in again, click on it, listen on it, see what happened. Here we can see there's a 1:14 discussion. You can go in, you can see if there was an actual conversation. We can see this was a conversation. Very nice vernac. They went through, was supposed to be a callback, but the agent says voicemail. So that's voicemails. Similarly also, just a logic check. You can go check, for instance, for any of your sales calls that are very short. You know your sales process takes a certain amount of time. So what this flags is, as an example, calls less than 1.5 minutes, but the agent said it was an actual sale. So logic says it's either a callback or it wasn't a sale, they dispositioned incorrectly. So you can investigate that. Similarly, so where they've said a dropped call, logic once again, and you can set your own parameters, but logic says if a customer drops, it would probably be right in the beginning of the call. They're not going to sit for longer than 1 minute or 2 minutes, waste their time and then drop the call. So here it looks for dropped calls that was wrapped as dropped, but the conversation was longer than 60 seconds. And again, then if you go in on these calls, you can have an idea on what happened on this call. It was 1:52. Was it actually dropped? What happened on the call? Was it dispositioned incorrectly, or what was the problem? So that was then just on your disposition or wrap checks. Similarly, so again, a lead that was closed off that will not be contacted again, but actually it was a voicemail on that call. So what should happen? It should be dispositioned as voicemail. We should be contacting the lead again, but what's happened now on the back end on the dialer, we've closed out the lead. So that was just your disposition and wrap checks. Very lastly, what I'm quickly going to show you, and I'm quickly going to go through because we are actually touching on this in our third webinar, which is the 10th of February, where we're going to touch more on agent level coaching for performance and addressing their efficiencies. But what Callbi also does, and I'm quickly going to show you, and it's built into the system, it calculates for every recording the duration of the recording, including then the conversation duration and the silence duration or percentage silence. So using this without even having built any query, you can use this to track time with your agents, either in terms of conversation or silences. So I'm first going to show you very nicely. You can check agent sales effectiveness in terms of how quickly or how long they take to close a sale. The first one in this example looks at sales calls, but the agent took longer than a certain amount of time to close that sale. In comparison to that, we then compare to agents who took less than a certain amount of time. Now, obviously, what you see in front of you is your quick and effective closers. You know these are your stronger guys. You can use them for new campaigns, etc. Or then you know, hang on, these guys need a bit more pampering, they need a bit more training, or we need to listen to their calls and understand why they've taken longer. At the bottom as well, you can also look at your non-interested calls. That's longer, for instance, than a certain duration. What this shows you, and this one specifically looks at shorter, if you look at longer, it will show you agents who struggle with objection handling, who take too long, who just don't realize when they need to end the call, they continue to objection handle. But what we see here is also agents who don't objection handle. And we'll see, for instance, if we open a call, if there was an objection, let's take this one, for example, 22 seconds. Good morning, can I speak to Mr. Smith? I'm really not interested. Oh, okay, thanks, bye. So this will show you on an agent level, have they done objection handling? Are they effective at doing it? And are they effective in closing that sales call within the time that they need to? The very last, again, with your silences, and like I said, this will touch on again on the 10th of Feb in that webinar. But you can now also go look at your agent inefficiencies. Now, this speaks to your resourcing, your workforce management. You are hoping that your agents are as productive as possible whilst they are logged in and on calls. But what happens is agents might have issues. They might not hang up the call. They might have system issues, or they have product knowledge gaps, or they're waiting for someone to assist on the floor, which causes silences on your calls. Now, silences are those times that could have been used more productively to take more calls, to make more calls, RPCs and sales. So the very first one looks at any of your calls that has a silence percentage more than 40%. Again, we can toggle, we can see where there are issues. You can open it, we can go into this, and we can understand what happened on the call. Mr. Smith, I'm not interested. But again, if you play the recording, it will show you exactly where those silences are. You can also look at durations in your calls. So not volumes, but actual silence durations. Again, it's just a different way of looking at it, but agents with very long silences on calls. Callbi also looks at what percentage of your silence is at the end of the conversation. So this is after the last word was spoken, the call, the customer said goodbye, voicemail was rang, it ended up, but the agent did not stop the call. So this is, for instance, where dialers, where there's no auto termination, the advisor or the agent can leave it hanging up until they decide to end it. So this card specifically looks at any of your calls where the post-conversation silence before the recording is ended is longer than 20 seconds. So this is typically where agents don't want to go ready to take the next call or to make the next call. And we've actually seen in environments where hours are lost, where agents will let it play, they will wait for the voicemail, for instance, to ring through, and there's a cap on a voicemail, it will go for a minute or minute and a half. They will let it play and they will wait. So once again, this highlights that problem for you. and you can go in on it. You can see exactly that post-conversation silence. 97% of it was at the end of the conversation. You can open it. Here, a perfect example. We can see, and let's see if we play it.
Lauren, hello? 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 Is anyone there?
As you can see, these flat lines are your silences. What happened here is the agent did not speak from their side. Customer answered the phone. Customer eventually hung up after they said hello, hello, but the recording played. They didn't end the call right up until a minute later. So very easy. You can also then just track actual conversation duration per agent. This is just to show you your outliers. So if on one day this person had a much higher conversation duration, it's just another way to highlight to see, do you need to investigate or what happened? And then the last two is just very long calls. Usually, again, an indication of inefficiencies. Sometimes it points to personal calls. We've seen that with some of our clients, but this is just a way to, for instance, look calls longer than a certain duration to flag them, so you can look at them. Similarly, also advisors or very short calls. So here we can see there's an outlier. We need to understand why. You can go in, you can see what was the types of calls. Was it real? Did he disposition correctly? Was it a leads issue, or what do we need to do? So that was everything from my side. I've gone through, like I said, there are so many more use cases, but these are definitely ones that will help you understand firstly your sales. Once it's made, have they done what they need to, and will it go through into fulfillment? Will help you understand why sales are not being made. What do you need to change? Is it script? Is it training? Is it behavior? Are your agents doing and wrapping what they need to, so that you've got a good view when you look at your wrap codes, what you can expect, and then also just efficiencies in terms of silence. How accurate are the scorecards? I'm quickly going to just show, and once again, this is a full process that we train on. We take an actual full hour as part of that 3 hours. There is a process that you work through, and I'm going to show you under queries an example of a query that has been done. It all depends on how you refine your query, but let's have a look quickly, for instance, at the call recording statement. If you've gone through your process, you've done a manual check, you've got a sample of calls, Callbi will measure that query against your manual control groups. So obviously you're hoping to see that it picks up on the calls it should, where you manually confirmed it's true, and it shouldn't pick up on the calls where you said it wasn't done. In this case, having done some refinement, it shows you 100% it's picking up everything it should, and there's no false flags. Now this will change if your query is not accurate, which will be an indication that you need to refine your query. You need to add phrases, or you need to remove phrases, or you need to add contextual words. But a very easy process if you've worked through it and you understand it. So that would answer the first question, that you go through a process, you ensure accuracy. We recommend you must tag at least 20 calls with the correct tag and an incorrect tag, that you've got enough. The more you can, the bigger your sample. But yeah, that's how you ensure your query accuracy, how you go through. We also say, usually within any call center, you've got a variance, so it shouldn't be, don't aim for the 100. We say anything 85% to 90% and up is sufficient. On this side, you're hoping that it is 15% or less. But this is being trained, there's manuals for it, so you have confidence if you work through your query that this is an indicator how accurate your results are. The word cloud you'll see in your query results screen. You will also see it under your dashboard. You can build an actual dashboard for a word cloud. But what this is a visual representation of words most regularly used within your call results. So you can toggle through this. The bigger the word, the more regularly it gets used. Obviously, there are some words in here that are not important. You can refine this by clicking on the word and clicking exclude. So you'll go through a refinement process. This is very handy if you've gone through the refinement, if you're looking for some information which you don't know what you're looking for. For instance, reasons for non-sales. So if you look at your non-sales, you refine your cloud, you might start picking up on certain words and certain phrases. So Rod, that's just your word cloud. So you'll use it, you'll refine it, and it will start jumping at you words that are quite prominent. An example, yes, for instance, if you've got different service suppliers, if you're in a service environment, or maybe in sales even, but different products, where you can start seeing which products are more prominent or not prominent. But that's your word cloud.